Thank you for watching. This is comparing two power sources to the Starlink Gen 3 standard equipment. First on the left is a 12 volt battery system connected to a 2000 watt inverter, which converts it to 240 volt AC. This then is connected to the power adapter that comes in the Starlink kit, and then that power supply converts it back down to 57 volts DC to go into the Gen 3 unit. On the right hand side is another test, which is basically a direct connection from the 12 volt battery system through a converter to 56 to 57 volts DC, and that connects straight into the back of the Gen 3 box. So it's bypassing an inverter and a power supply adapter that's provided by Starlink. So in this demonstration, it's just been switched on both of them, and as you'll see, the amps are quite high. This is only temporarily whilst the Starlink Gen 3 box is booting up. So in the boot up sequence, it's always taking more power to fire everything up. So just be mindful that at the end, when it settles down after a few minutes, it'll sit down to around about 5 amps, give or take. Depending on how many devices you've got connected, location, and what you're doing with those devices, streaming services and things like that will make a difference on how many amps you're drawing. So that will fluctuate up and down. And just be mindful, depending on what device you connect to your caravan, RV, utility vehicle, if you're connecting by a cigarette lighter socket, normally the amps maximum drawn is about 8 amps. Some are 10 amps. So if you find that you've bought some equipment to be powering your Starlink system off grid and you're plugging into that cigarette lighter, I know when I've tested it multiple times, it's looks like it's working. The Gen 3 box white light illumination comes on and off, pulsating, and things like that, and Wi-Fi comes on your mobile phone. But unfortunately, it gets to a point where it literally drops out, and then the Gen 3 starts the boot up sequence again, and it just keeps repeating that. So the result was that on testing, it was because the cable to the cigarette lighter socket in multiple things, which was car and in a caravan, it wasn't powerful enough. It can take more amps than 8 amps or 10 amps on boot up. On some tests, I've seen it as high as 12 amps. So that would make sense why it not necessarily work for you. So just be mindful of that. So these are just showing you now on the screen that these are just a few speed tests. One was on the left hand side. That 10 minutes full video was filmed last night. But on the right hand side, that was filmed this morning at 11 a.m. But the actual speeds and service was pretty on par with each other. So that part of it wasn't really an issue. It was just the fact that using two methods, it seemed like the 2000 watt inverter and then going through the transformer with the Starlink back to the unit, it was losing around about 1 amp or so. I did a test on the 2000 watt inverter. I turned the inverter on. I did not have anything plugged into the inverter, into the power sockets, and the multimeter was reading 1.1 amps. So that probably does make sense when you look at the readings on the screen, there's around about that sort of discrepancy. So in reality, yes, running it through an inverter and then a power supply, um, back down to the volts for the Gen 3. In this example, it's using more amps, 1 amp, 1.1 amp. Doesn't sound much, but if you're using more devices and multiple devices, it's going to draw more power. Potentially, it could be as much as 2 or 3 amps in total you could be losing per hour. And if you multiply that by 10, well, it starts getting up there, doesn't it? So just be mindful of that. Streaming services, as you can see, on one single device. There was nothing else connected through the wireless. This example is a Samsung Galaxy S8 on 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi and streaming 9 News, for example, and it weren't too bad. It seemed to be sitting on around 5 amps as well for that. So if you can go on that sort of example, that's sort of what you're going to be expecting if you're running it off grid. So 10 hours is 50 amps. So ideally you probably want some solar power there too, to keep your batteries charged up throughout the day, and then you've got enough battery power for when the sun goes down. Generally, when I've had multiple devices connected, such as Wi-Fi calling, so you've got cell service when you're off grid, out of mobile phone coverage area, and you're streaming TV and everything. I've always found it's normally around about 5 amps, 5 or 6 amps max that I seem to be using. So I'm quite happy with that. I do know that the Starlink minis appear to use less amps. I've got a feeling it was around about 3 amps for their units, and that can be quite a lot if you think about it. I mean, that could be as much as, say, 2 to 3 amps, 10 hours, 20 to 30 amp hours, so over 10 hours. But I've got plenty of solar power, so it doesn't really bother me. Anyway, I hope this video helps you and just gives you an example of two ways of powering your Starlink Gen 3 system off-grid using a 12-volt battery system. Thanks for watching.